Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Perilous World Radio. Alan Masters here with my wife, Jan. Mike Jones is with us today, and also Dr. Keith Smith. He is the founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. Mike Jones recently did an interview with him, which is on his Facebook page and his YouTube channel. You can see that extended interview. But what I gathered out of it, Doctor, welcome to the show, by the way. Thanks for coming in and being a part of this whole thing, is that hospitals, like every other business, are a business. And in many ways, very much like a franchise. And they do what the franchise tells them to do. The big hospital franchise in the sky, we'll call it. They aren't there for your good. They're there, just like any other franchise, to make a profit. And so from there, Mike Jones, I want Mike Jones to do a little bit of an intro, but that's my understanding of hospitals, is that they're just a money-making machine, and they really don't care whether so much you live or die. I mean, maybe they could say they do, but at the end of the day, it's make money, just like any other franchise. But Mike, go ahead. What maybe you could throw out the first one here.
Yeah, well, Dr. Keith Smith had founded the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, and he's really a free market pioneer. He's probably known by all kinds of monikers. I think of him as a godfather of free market healthcare. I bet he's heard 100 of those. And so I'll just let him tell us about it, and the genesis of this. And this is really kind of a moral quest for you, isn't it, Keith?
Yeah, it does. It boils down to right and wrong. It boils down to mutually beneficial exchange. It boils down to the golden rule. And I was raised in a Christian home where, we were taught to treat others as we want to be treated. And that essentially is the foundation of economic exchanges as well that are mutually beneficial. And so when I realized early in my career that I was aiding and abetting a crime, that I was an accessory to a financial assassination of a patient or a family that presented to one of these hospitals where I worked for fairly minor procedures. The only way as an anesthesiologist I could do anything about that was to walk away, and that's what I did. I was joined by like-minded anesthesiologist Steve Lantier, and the two of us walked away, opened our own facility, and swore that we would not just be medical but also financial advocates for the patients who entrusted their care to us.
God bless you for that. I remember when I had my gallbladder out, I was in this, what's called a magnetic hospital. You know what that is, right, doctor? Magnetic hospital, they're award-winning in everything. It's just the best of the best in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I thought to myself, yeah, I'm in an award-winning hospital. They have the best. They have the machine, the nuclear machine. They can put you inside this machine and watch your organs working and put dye in your blood, and you could see it going through your body, and all these crazy, giant, expensive, multi-million-dollar, machines. And they literally let me get to the brink of death. And I realized that, this is a business. They've got it figured out, like In-N-Out Burger, McDonald's, Taco Bell, and all these other guys. They've got their system down just right. You get to the brink of death, and then they save your life, and you're willing to give them anything. Your family's willing to give them anything if you just save my loved one. When the reality was, I had a gallstone, and they could have sent me to another hospital right away and said that had somebody that was ready to do this little thing. But they kept me in this hospital until like the last minute. I was dying. And finally they pulled this little gallstone out, and I'm fine. And when I saw the bill that had so many zeros behind it, it was like, oh my gosh. I realized I own cattle. I realized that each one of us are nothing more than cattle being fattened for the slaughter. And they have the right through insurance companies to do whatever it takes to fix us. And the bills are astronomical. No wonder. They have no oversight, really. Who is the oversight? So I don't know. Maybe I'm just going too far, but maybe you can comment on that kind of a situation.
Well, it's actually worse.
Worse
than you described. Yeah, and I'll push back a little bit on your context because hospitals are not businesses. If you are a business, a real business in a competitive free market, and you provide service not unlike what you just described, you go out of business. So these are not businesses, and that's what I have championed is the concept that the industry that I'm involved with must obey the same market discipline every other industry in this country endures. If a restaurant serves poisonous, awful food with crappy service,
right,
they go.
Yeah.
They go away.
Yeah.
They don't receive some slap on the wrist from the health department.
These are above. They're above the law in that kind of a way. Go ahead. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't think this is a business. I think of the unholy relationship between government, these so-called not-for-profit hospitals, and insurance carriers as a cartel. The only difference between the health cartel and the Mexican drug cartels is the Mexican drug cartels deliver a product on time.
Yeah.
So it's the only difference. I mean, so these are not businesses that have to provide some reasonable service.
You're right.
In order to be paid. Yeah, and so that's a big part of what is wrong, is that this financial and market discipline that would apply to any other business that acted that way does not apply to them.
You're right. They're not actually in what would be called the fair market. They're above it. They're above the law. They're above everything. You described it far better than I do. They are a health cartel. And we have no way. Yeah, go ahead.
And in many cases, they're tax exempt. Keith Smith's operation, they pay taxes.
Yeah.
They pay property taxes. They pay income taxes.
Yeah.
So they're in a totally different world. So answer me this, Keith Smith. How is it that you can offer services at sometimes as little as a tenth of what the non-for-profit hospital offers them, and you have to pay taxes on top of that, and you still make a profit? Explain that to me.
And you have a minute to be able to explain that before commercial break. Go ahead, give it a try.
If I only had 5 seconds, I would just say greed. You know, there are two economic models in this industry. One is how do I maximize revenue? And that, unfortunately, is the prevailing model. The other model, the one I champion, is how do I maximize extreme delivery of value? And that's the model I champion. That's the difference. I don't try to get every cent that I can. We try to be profitable, but we also want patients to feel like they've been involved in a mutually beneficial exchange.
We are talking to Dr. Keith Smith. He is the founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. He's an anesthesiologist by trade. Started this journey in his life in 1990, 35 years in the medical industry. And we're talking about hospitals, or should I say health cartels. All I can say is how hopeless it seems when you go to a hospital and you know that you have to you're dealing with a very sophisticated cartel. And to your point, Dr. Smith, they are not even held to a standard that the real cartels are held to. You know what I'm saying? You said it. They don't have to deliver on time. They don't have to deliver a good quality. We'll talk more on the other side of the break with Dr. Keith Smith. Stay with us. Coming back. Welcome back. Special guest, Dr. Keith Smith today. He is the founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, and he has called, well, the health system, the health cartel. I'm just going to toss it back to you, Keith. Unless, Jan, you have a question, or Mike, you want to make a comment?
I will. I'll go ahead and have him go a little further.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
I want to hear some of the genesis of because 1990 is when you started practice, but you didn't start the Surgery Center of Oklahoma until about 97. Is that correct? How did that all take place?
Yeah, I had worked in the hospitals, traditional hospitals, for about 7 years before I'd come to some of these conclusions. One of which was hospitals charging way more than they should. The other is that they were not my friend. The other was that the government didn't have any money that they didn't first steal from someone else, and that if I was accepting government money, I was therefore the recipient of stolen property. I also came to the conclusion that the hospitals were not the patient's friend, and they were not the surgeon's friend. So an opportunity presented itself, and Steve Lantier and I, a completely separate story I could tell, bought this failing surgery center on a hunting trip. And we were able to buy it for a reasonable amount, and just assume the lease, so we didn't have that capital expense. And we had about 12 surgeons with whom we had forged incredible loyalty, and they followed us. They followed us to this new entity, and that was in 1997, May 28th. And we are now, whatever that is, we're 20, however many years old that is, 26 years, 27 years old now, and 129 surgeons on staff.
Wow.
So it has been a success. We've been attacked, as you can imagine, by the hospitals, by the insurance companies. The state health department was weaponized against us at one point, and not just one point, many points. I spent a lot of time at the state capitol here in Oklahoma City drilling into legislators' heads that I didn't want anything from them. I didn't want any favors. I just wanted them to not hamstring me, not sandbag what I had in mind, and the result would be a lowering of prices, and the quality would soar, and we would attempt to establish and create essentially a competitive marketplace for surgical care in the state of Oklahoma.
Here's a comment, by the way. 2019, President Trump signed an executive order that hospitals would be required to publish prices that reflect what people pay for services, price transparency in healthcare. And then the other one was RFK Jr., director of HHS. Do you see change coming? Maybe you could address both those.
So to your first point, I was actually in the White House. I was invited to the signing of that executive order.
Awesome.
Wow.
Larry Van Horn, the economist who spent most of the time at the lectern explaining how that all came about and what it meant. Larry told me when I was there, he and I become friends. He said, this all started at a surgery center in Oklahoma City. You know that. Because there was no medical price transparency until I launched our website in 2009, which my economist friends have told me essentially was the creation de novo of a surgical competitive marketplace. So yeah, I was there. I'm actually opposed to government mandates of any kind. Government is that entity, all of whose ideas are so wonderful, they have to be enforced at the point of a gun.
Yeah.
So, and transparency is one of those. I've told people our free market movement will do well because it's based on mutually beneficial exchange. And the only time we'll know it's in trouble is when the government shows up to help us.
Right.
So
yes.
I'm very paradoxically, I'm opposed to mandating price transparency. And two of the consequences of the government getting involved in it have already been realized. One is they've redefined price transparency. Now, if you go to the cesspool in DC and you're talking to people about price transparency, well, for most of the bureaucrats, that means what is the patient's out of pocket? It's not the price, it's the patient's out of pocket.
Boy,
Wow.
And then the other thing that happened that I predicted is that Congress would sell indulgences. They would sell exemptions. And essentially that's what they've done. Now they have these fines that are not severe,
Yeah.
that only the big hospital systems can pay for noncompliance. And that has caused a problem for some small hospitals who cannot pay these fines. But I have a solution to that. I'll talk to you about some other time in the interview. I'm happy to say not all these hospitals are awful. Not all of them are bad. Not all of them are price gouging. A lot of them are putting their toe in the water and jumping into this marketplace because they're confident that the care they deliver is high quality.
To that point, I want to just read.
The government's horrible.
Oh, well,
anything the government gets involved with is going to turn to much. It's just going to be awful.
We have on Wednesdays on the show, we have Brian Boteller from the Gospel Rescue Mission, and he says, I don't accept a dime from the government because if I do, then they own me, then they tell me what to do. So, but here's a good comment from Ed. It says, this conversation about hospitals doesn't take into effect the cost of uninsured patients and the high cost of equipment like MRIs, CT scanners.
Yeah.
Now, the last line was, good erectile dysfunction doctors and nurses, etc. My life was saved. I'm not sure what the erectile dysfunction part of ED. What does that mean? I'm not sure. I'm sure that I got that wrong. What's an ED doctor? Isn't that
emergency?
What?
Erectile dysfunction.
That's what I thought. But Ed, congratulations. It saved his life. But anyway.
Or emergency department. Who knows?
Yeah, that's probably what it was. Anyway. All right. We have to take another break. We're going to, our next segment is a nice long segment. Again, joining us today is Dr. Keith Smith, founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, waking us all up to the harsh realities that we already kind of suspected and knew, but he's giving us the inside track to all this. When we come back, somebody made another good comment here about RFK, and I want your comment on your answer on this. With RFK Jr. as director of HHS, does Dr. Smith see good change coming? If you guys want to hear the other side and the answer to that on the other side, just stay with us. We'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. Be right back. Okay, coming back in. Special guest today, Dr. Keith Smith, founded the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, and talking about the health cartel. My wife Jan here with me, Mike Jones with us. The question was, with RFK Jr. as director of HHS, do you, Dr. Smith, see a good change coming? Your thoughts on that?
I just look at who is really bothered by his presence in the system. No one that's an established mainstream Washington apparatchik wants any change. And so to know whether or not he is a good addition can be answered by just watching who is incredibly bothered.
There you go.
Yes. So, I would think Anthony Fauci, with RFK in charge, may actually have to answer for some of what he's done. Otherwise, he'll get off skate-free like he has. There are too many names to mention. But I'm enjoying watching the fireworks because a lot of these people who deserve intense scrutiny are now maybe going to receive it. And now, everybody likes justice. Everybody does.
That's right.
Yeah. Ed from Oregon has corrected me. Emergency department, not ED, the one I thought it was. Everybody's laughing on the chat room. Alan, it shows where Alan's mind is. I'm sorry, it said ED. That was all I could come up with there.
He's watched a lot of, cable news. So.
My gosh.
So in order for you to truly be on the same playing field as not-for-profit hospitals, they would have to not have that not-for-profit status, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. Senator Tom Coburn from Oklahoma was famous for his government waste report that he produced every year, and he was just savage. He was just completely fearless. And he was in my office one time. He wanted there to be a meeting. He wanted there to be a meeting of the minds, and he wanted to play peacekeeper. So he invited this hospital administrator in who was a vicious adversary of mine. And we're sitting around my conference table, which is very small, unlike the hospital administrators. And Coburn is, talking to this administrator about, how, we can charge a tenth. And the hospital administrator basically verbatim said what your listener sent in on the chat. Well, about our cost and all the uninsured and all this other stuff. And then the hospital administrator's whining and complaining. And he says, it's just not a level playing field. And Coburn looked at the administrator and said, you're right. You don't pay tax. And it was so beautiful because I think about what my prices would be if we didn't have to pay tax. Well, they'd be half.
Wow.
I mean, when you add it all up, it's about 50% of what, property, sales tax, income tax. So I would cut my taxes by another 50% if I didn't have to pay tax. So now you're talking about, what, 20x difference?
So in other words, if they wanted to compete with you, given their current status, they could wipe you out easily just by foregoing the just massive profit they're taking.
Yeah, so I was in a public forum years ago, and a hospital administrator suggested just that. He said, Dr. Smith, I think if I were in your town, I would just match all of your prices, and then you would be gone. And I said, oh no. I said, if you matched my prices,
you'd be gone.
The only way to compare us would be quality, and then you would be dead.
Yeah,
that's right.
There you go.
That's right.
And we're better than you, buddy.
I welcome competition. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
These hospitals have colluded with the government to make sure that they can avoid it. And that's why we're where we are. That's why quality is so sporadic, that it's been so well documented by my friend Marty McCary in his first book, Unaccountable. And that's why prices are so ridiculous, which he has beautifully detailed in his second book, The Price We Pay, which is that's just great stuff.
All right.
So
if you're,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Well, I was just going to say, if you're just joining us, that guy that tried to interrupt me is Mike Jones. And then we have alias Smith and Jones, Dr. Keith Smith with us, and my wife, Jan. And but somebody made a comment I want to throw on the table here. Because we're far enough past the COVID thing now that we can all kind of, hindsight is 2020. Anthony says Senator Ron Johnson vows to subpoena CDC, FDA, and HHS over COVID-19 vaccine adverse effect data as he assumes key Senate role. When we look at the aftermath of the COVID experiment that we were all the guinea pigs for, can you give us your comments on and your thoughts on the whole COVID thing and ivermectin and all the garbage, just from a doctor's point of view? I'm just curious what goes through your mind when you think about what you witnessed and we all witnessed for the last few years, Dr. Smith.
Well, I'm not an infectious disease doctor. I'm an anesthesiologist. However,
However,
I learned that the government would lie about anything early in my career. When I realized that they would actually lie us into a war, when Colin Powell held up the white powder that he knew was not anthrax, they lied us into a war, and everyone knows that. So a government that would lie us into a war, what would they not lie to us about? So COVID for me was a vindication of my truth method. And here's my truth method. It is so hard to know what is true these days. I don't pretend to know everything that is true or false. Anyone that does is very scary.
yeah.
However, here's where I start. If anyone working for or associated with government at any level says anything, I assume that is false.
Yeah, isn't that sad? Yeah.
Now, it might be true, and I'll acknowledge that, but my default is that there is some hidden motivation, there is some corruption, and history is on my side.
Yeah.
One of my heroes, Llewellyn Rockwell, the president and founder of the Ludwig von Mises Institute, has a great quote. He says, "You know that something is for sure true only when the government issues its official denial."
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so that's where I start. I start with, I am being lied to, but keeping an open mind that there's a possibility that once in a while they'll throw out little tidbits that are true to maintain their credibility. I did not believe one bit of what Anthony Fauci said about COVID, because he is a liar. He's a known liar.
Yeah.
Great viral geneticist Peter Duesberg demonstrated that many, many years ago. People have even forgotten who that is.
Yeah, a lot of AIDS patients died because of Fauci.
You remember when AIDS was going to kill all the heterosexuals as well. And all of that was downstream of Fauci's power grab. This guy's a liar. I mean, he's a megalomaniac. And I knew he was lying. I knew every time he opened his mouth, whether it was about masks, social distancing, all of that was lies because he said them.
Yep.
I knew if he said it, it was a lie.
We did a fun thing here, my brother David and I, when this was all going on. We both could do Dr. Fauci very well. And so we would do dueling Faucis, and we would have these insane arguments with the Dr. Fauci voice, of course, you know. Anyway, and it was just, I think if you had even a tiny bit of clarity in your life, you could see that I don't trust that guy. I don't trust what he's saying. I just got that feeling. Let me ask you to be clear on something. We have about 2 minutes in this segment, and then we're going to have one more segment with you. But are you feeling positive about RFK? Or what are your thoughts about him, top level?
Again, I like anyone who has plans to disrupt the regime and the cesspool in Washington, D.C.
You must be a big Doge fan then.
Doge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I did a podcast with Vivek.
Cool.
I'll send you a link to it. But
I'd love to see that.
I think we need to be real clear that, the hospitals, insurance companies, big pharma, they all need the thumping that they get.
Yeah.
But the real criminal, the real culprit, and the source of everything that the American people hate about the way medical services are delivered in the United States is the federal government.
Yep.
All of these entities, hospitals, big pharma, insurance companies, all they're doing is acting on favors given them at auction and that they pay dearly for at the auction in DC. And I want to make that clear because when when people want to throw up their hands with the way medical services are delivered, who do they want to turn it over to? They want to turn the whole thing over to the federal government, and they are the source of everything that is wrong. So, when I hear that Ron Johnson is going to subpoena and have hearings, is that just more grandstanding? Why don't they abolish some of these agencies? We know what they do when they have power now. They've shown us that.
Yep. All right, we're going to take another break. We're talking to Dr. Keith Smith, founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. He's talking about the health cartel, and I don't think there's anybody that's listening doubts that that's what we're dealing with in our world today. It's Perilous World Radio. Mike Jones is here. Jan Masters. I'm Alan Masters. We'll be right back with more of Dr. Keith Smith. 7 minutes in this segment, guys. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can we hit your website? And because we didn't go into that much, but then also tell people how they can not do business with you, but perhaps coerce a better deal out of their own doctor in their own area.
I'm going to let you ask him that question on the other side. And doctor, make sure, what is your website address? I'll write it down so I can reiterate.
It's surgerycenterok.com.
Okay, surgerycenterok.com. Very good. Okay, here we come back in. This is 7 minutes, and then we're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for doing this in advance. Appreciate you. Here we go. Welcome back, Alan Masters, Jan Masters, and Mike Jones, who interviewed Dr. Keith Smith on his podcast and said, you got to talk to this guy. More people around the country need to hear about Dr. Keith Smith, founder of the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. Mike, you asked him a really good question in the commercial break, so I'm going to let you take that away.
Yeah, I mean, I just want people to actually go to the Surgery Center of Oklahoma's website, which is what again? It's
surgerycenterok.com. Surgerycenterok.com. Go ahead.
Yeah, and see how it's structured. You have these little, like what you used to see on pain reliever commercials, this outline of a body taking a pain reliever or whatever, but it's got dots all over it. And you press on the dots, and then you choose whatever procedure you want a price for, and it actually gives you the price. And it's not just it's not just the surgery center's price. It's everybody that's going to be dealing with you. It's one-stop shopping out the door.
That's awesome.
A done deal. You don't get trickling medical bills for months. And then not only is he doing that, but he also has Atlas Billing Company, which is a service to doctors that want to do what he's doing. And he aids them by having already thought that through, what the pricing will be, and assisting them in that.
Wow.
But that can also be used by you for leverage for not coming to him. I mean, that's an amazing thing. Is that he doesn't care about taking your money. He wants you to get the best deal possible. So you can use that. You can say, hey, listen, here's what this is available for. You could talk to your orthopedist or whatever and say, hey, listen, I can get a knee replacement here for such and such. And if you contact these people, they'll break down who gets what out of that. And
price matching.
You'll even facilitate the billing, I guess, for them and distribute to the subcontractors there. But that's an important thing, and I'll allow you to elaborate on that if you would, Keith.
Well, I hope the listeners understand. This is a good news story. This is ticker tape parade stuff. If we actually have a competitive economy, market economy in medical services, because the price and quality results will be exactly what happens to computers and televisions. The price will fall and the quality will soar. So my economist friends told me that the most radical thing that I did was not post prices online in 2009. It was post all-inclusive prices online in 2009. And after I did that, the first patients that arrived were Canadians, which is really instructive for everyone who thinks insurance means that you receive medical services. So when I posted those prices, though, we began to receive inquiries from patients who needed surgery we could not appropriately provide at an outpatient surgery center. So, a patient from Canada asked me how much for open heart surgery. And I dove into their medical records. They needed a 3-vessel bypass. And I called my friend at the Oklahoma Heart Hospital and said, hey, there's a Canadian who's in trouble. They're on a waiting list. How much for an open heart surgery? Well, he knew I'd posted the website. And he said, damn it, I knew you were going to call me. Give me an hour. So in an hour, he called me back and he gave me his price, $34,000. All in.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
probably a third.
He had traveled to Oklahoma City and had their heart surgery. Well, I had established a clearinghouse to which patients could make their payment.
Great.
So they'd only have to pay one time. And that's Atlas Billing Company. And they have their own
That's
website.
amazing.
Yeah.
And my friend at the heart hospital said, how are we going to manage this financially? And I said, well, the patient's going to wire the money to Atlas Billing Company, and I'm going to pay everybody on your end. So those prices are all listed on a website as well. So if you have sticker shock, if you have a high deductible, if you're a member of a cost-sharing ministry, you're a member of a self-funded health plan, or you don't have any insurance at all, you can look at Atlas Billing Company's website or the Surgery Center of Oklahoma's website, look at those prices, and go to your local physician or doctor and say, hey, this is what I can buy it for at Oklahoma City or any number of other places that have emulated what we've done. You need to step up and price match or I'm out of here. So this price war has begun. And I'm happy to say there are a lot of hospitals in the United States. I give them credit, kudos. They have stepped up and they are matching prices. And if they don't know how to implement these bundle payments, they reach out to Atlas Billing Company, and I do that for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is radical, transformative stuff, and it's a great news story, and everyone should be celebrating.
Agreed.
Okay.
You know what? There's one other thing.
You got
People,
1 minute. Go ahead.
Okay, there's like 50% of the people out there, they have a card in their wallet and they just whip it out and they don't care about the cost or whatever.
Right.
But those people too should be mindful of this and be cheerleading this sort of thing because the cost that you pay for healthcare insurance is also dictated by this cartel.
All right. Speaking of this hour, we're going to call it the health cartel because that's really what we're discovering through talking to Dr. Keith Smith. Okay, so the website, once again, is surgerycenterok.com, and that is for the Surgery Center of Oklahoma and Dr. Keith Smith. You have been a great guest, very insightful. My dad used to say people live longer to live wronger. And so there's another side to this whole thing, which is the spiritual journey. And that's usually what this show is about, is to, get yourself right with God. And so we'll be talking about that next on the show. But Dr. Keith Smith, thank you for such an insightful interview and appreciate you being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We're going to take a break for the commercial for the top of the news hour and top of the hour news and be right back with more. Stay with us, folks. Sorry, boys. We ran out of time right there.
Thanks very much, Dr. Keith.
You did a great job. You're obviously the real deal. So thank you for being with us.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Somebody will listen to this and end up having surgery for a tenth of what they'd otherwise would have paid.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Okay. Bye-bye. Yep.